to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to college prospect evaluation with a fantasy football focus. With your hosts, John Arrington, Aaron Wilcox, and Andy Starr. This podcast brings you actionable strategies and player-driven analysis for your Devy, C2C, and Dynasty leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive into the Freshmen. Welcome into the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, John Arrington, and tonight we are diving back into the freshman recruits. We talked about all the big names. We talked even last week about some of the names that were popping and standing out in spring practices, but we haven't really done a deep dive just yet on all these players, and so that's what we're going to do tonight, but I cannot do it alone, so let's bring on the boys. Aaron and Andy, how are we doing tonight, guys?
Doing well. Thanks, John. Happy to be back after a couple weeks off and the trip down to Florida to visit John himself. So that wasn't the only thing we did, but it was a highlight, and it was always great to meet up. So happy to be back with you guys. Anticipating some NFL draft action here later this week, which will be just a blast, plus getting into some fun freshman conversations as well here.
And I am also happy to be here. You know how much I dive into the freshmen each year, so this is exciting for me as it is for you guys. But, you know, it is different, though, because now that I have these spring reports to go off of, it's not just like the 247 star rating. I can kind of go with some tangible information, which, you know, exists with prospect evaluation as well, but I guess I kind of like it better when I'm hearing it from their college coaches than like a high school evaluation, if that makes sense.
You know it's bad in the rookie streets when Andy is excited to talk about freshmen, and that's where we're at. No, we're obviously extremely excited for the draft this week, but we just sat there and talked about it, and we're like, you know, should we do another rookie mock where we don't know landing spots and this and that? We've been there, done that. We've discussed the rookies at depth. You know, we obviously have all that information, but we're just waiting 2 more days to get that extra piece of information that we need to give you guys everything else. And then obviously we will do some rookie mocks and things like that to get you ready for your drafts or, you know, whatever you need. But we figured, hey, let's dive back into Devy. Let's dive back into the freshmen tonight. That way we can get you some actionable info for your supplemental drafts and, you know, possible trades, you know, getting you excited for, you know, getting some picks, things like that. So we got a lot to talk about. Aaron, you weren't here last week. Like I said, we discussed some of the freshmen and stuff with spring battles. But, you know, why don't you start us off with some, I mean, it could be any position, any battle, whatever you want to talk about here. Some freshman sleepers, or at least freshman players that we haven't discussed enough yet.
Sure. Well, one of the most exciting rooms in the country and just positions at a specific school every year is the Ohio State wide receiver room. And that is just a room after their spring game and with some of the spring reports that is definitely oozing with some freshman talent. And there's certainly opportunity there. So now that we have Carnell Tate, who's probably going to be an early first round pick, exiting, not a lot of proven production after Jeremiah Smith there, who is obviously an alpha and a stud who will be there one more season at Ohio State. There's some freshman standouts from spring practices. And of course, most people will know Chris Henry Jr., 5-star guy, has been a 5-star for quite some time. Big frame, athletic kid, some injury history there, but nonetheless, very promising profile. But then we have a couple other guys, Draquindon Gifford, who is a late riser, even a 5-star in the Rivals end rankings, basically. And then you have Brock Boyd, who is just a 3-star guy, just off of most people's radars. But that was a guy, one of the last things that Heartline did for that team was just bring him in as a recruit. And Brock Boyd has been just excellent. I can't remember his nickname. Maybe one of you guys have heard it. It's kind of a fun nickname that they've had for Brock Boyd, who has just been unstoppable in spring practices. The game itself, he didn't have a large role, but Chris Henry Jr. had that large role for them. So I think he's probably the most exciting name, but now you got a couple other capable guys who will be definitely coveted in supplemental drafts.
I think another name out of Ohio State that deserves to be mentioned is, I guess, offensive weapon Legend Bay, who was originally at Tennessee and then flipped to Ohio State. But he's been getting a ton of praise from the coaching staff. I think Ryan Day called him a poor man's Tyreek Hill, which is obviously interesting because he's listed as a running back. But it seems like they plan on using him all over the field. And early on, he was like named the freshman breakout in camp. I think he suffered an injury late in the camp, so he missed the spring game. But obviously, Bo Jackson's dealing with a torn labrum, so he hasn't been able to practice at all during spring. So there's been opportunities in the running back room, and it seems like he's getting mixed in a lot as a wide receiver as well, or at least like he gets some packages where they're going to line him up out there. And there's just not you've obviously got Jeremiah Smith. I think we kind of have seen what we're going to see with Brandon Inniss. So there is opportunity for people to fill roles in this offense, whether that's Chris Henry, Brock Boyd, maybe Legend Bay. Obviously, even in the running back room, I know Bo Jackson ran for 1,000 yards, but C.J. Donaldson scored double-digit touchdowns last year. So there's points to be had for these freshmen who have, by all accounts, really performed well this spring. So it'll be interesting to see who really steps up and fills some roles here.
Yeah, that one's interesting with Legend Bay. I don't know if we've truly discussed it, but I feel like Bo Jackson's a little overrated. And so, I wonder if like somebody explosive and fun like Legend Bay could cut into his playing time at least somewhat, especially in like the receiving game and things like that. So that will definitely be interesting. Chris Henry kind of got like Chris Henry Jr. Kind of got like talked over and kind of dismissed at the beginning of spring practices. He wasn't the first to lose his black stripe and all that kind of stuff. And then next thing you know, 4 for 96 and a touchdown and a 40-yard touchdown in the spring game. And I think we're thinking Chris Henry's going to be just fine. So I don't think that's going to be too worried. Aaron, I'm sorry, my son called me right as you were talking, so I didn't really hear everything you said, but I definitely did hear the Legend Bay talk when I got back on here.
Yeah, and I will say the thing with Legend Bay is that he's just kind of positionless, which I don't typically like those guys coming into college. Like year after year, you see that kind of struggle. And for example, he just does not. He's not a refined wide receiver whatsoever. So if he does end up hitting, it's more like a Paris Campbell, Curtis Samuel. You go down the list there of those guys who have played at Ohio State in the past, but not really been well-rounded guys. If he's at the running back position, it's fun. But I mean, I think Bo Jackson is clearly a better natural running back than Bay. So I think despite the hype there, it will take some injuries, which there. Hey, to be fair, there are injuries, right? Bo Jackson and Isaiah West are both banged up and out, I believe, with some shoulder surgery rehab this spring. So it's like, yes, there's opportunity there in the backfield, but long term, I'm not a big Bay guy. But I do think that this trio of wide receivers, we could see two of them stand out. But again, we said that with Noah Rogers, Brandon Inniss, and Carnell Tate back in the day. Only one of those guys truly ever realized their potential and actually had an early role. So maybe we should only expect one of these guys. And Chris Henry Jr. seems to be that favorite. That's why you have to take him as a top 2 or 3 wide receiver in your supplemental drafts. But don't sleep on maybe Gurford if he is falling like in the middle to late rounds in supplemental drafts, and same with Brock Boyd. I took Brock Boyd in, I don't know what it was, maybe like the 10th, 11th round or something like that in a supplemental recently, and I felt pretty good about that, considering all the hype coming out. Just wanted to take a stab at a potential early contributor at Ohio State.
Now, have you heard much about Guilford? Because I swear, he got praise in the beginning to the point where even people were even questioning, is it Guilford? Is it Henry? Like that kind of thing. And I have not heard a single thing about Guilford since then. Even in like spring practices or spring game or anything, he was a weird one because the services had him fairly low. I want to say like a low end 4-star, high end 3-star prospect going into the spring, and then like right at the end or right before spring practices started or something like that, boom, he jumped up to like a mid-level 4-star prospect. And so I don't know exactly what changed their minds. I know sometimes there's like all-star games and things like that change. Somebody decides, hey, I really like this guy now. Maybe it was one service in particular. I'm not 100% sure. I just know I have not heard anything about him since, and so that scares me a little bit. I was always kind of like iffy about like, well, why is he getting pushed up so high anyway? When he wasn't considered a great prospect 2 weeks ago, but now he's been so quiet that scares me even off a little bit more than I'd want to be. Because of him moving up and the way that I do it and everything, he did move up into the same range as like Naeem Burrows, Corey Barber, players like that for me. But I think that I would be, especially like we've heard Burrow's name, like we talked about him last week, how he was standing out. Like I'm definitely looking into him, probably Corey Barber as well before I would do anything, and then maybe I would consider Guilford. But the way that other people have talked about him and stuff like that, I think that he would already be gone at that point.
Yeah, I do think he's going to fall a little bit in supplemental drafts, thinking more that 5 to 7 or 8 round range. If there's more hype that comes out, then that'll get pushed up. But he's just not really a priority in a lot of drafts because he wasn't highly anticipated earlier in the process for those who are kind of trying to scout these guys earlier on. So, anyways, you mentioned a couple interesting names there. I mean, I think Corey Barber, is a good shout out at LSU, but he's not an early enrollee that I know of. But Jabari Mack is. Jabari Mack is the freshman wide receiver who's really making big time plays at LSU. If you haven't seen the Jabari Mack touchdown one-handed catch from spring practice in front of the whole team and everybody goes crazy, you should definitely check it out. And overall, he's not a perfect prospect by any means, but Matt could force his way onto the field at some point this year for LSU. And then John also mentioned Naeem Burrows, who's been impressing in that Clemson slot role. He's the next guy up after Antonio Williams is now gone. He's not going to be the wide receiver one for Clemson, and I know, like John had mentioned, Tyler Brown. People are still talking about Tyler Brown out there for Clemson.
I didn't mention Tyler Brown. Another pod mentioned Tyler Brown.
Fair enough. But Naeem Burrows is just such a talented guy. It's going to be hard to keep him off the field with his explosiveness. And at the end of the day, we know that there's other talented guys there, TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco Jr., but Burrows should be able to break the year 1-0 marks, plus make a nice impact with his explosiveness at Clemson. So I'm pretty comfortable with projecting Burrows, even if he is more of a slot guy, as a year one impact player.
Yeah, I think so with Burrows as well, especially considering, the question mark surrounding Wesco. Like, is he going to be able to play right away this season, or is there going to be, an extended recovery that takes, a chunk of the beginning of the season or maybe even the whole season from him this year? So when you hear the stuff that's coming out of camp for Burrows, you have to get excited, and he does kind of just fill that hole that was left by Antonio Williams, in that he's going to be, the premier slot receiver on that offense, which it's Clemson. They're going to pass the ball quite a lot, no matter who the quarterback is. We talked about Tate Reynolds last week. Could obviously be Chris Vazina as well. No matter who it is, there's going to be plenty of production in that passing game. So as far as the LSU guys, I just feel like the chances that any of these freshmen break through this year is going to be slim. I know that Lane Kiffin loves to throw the ball a ton, but it just feels like this is going to be Jace Brown, Winston Watkins, and hopefully those two. I know that there's a third receiver on that team that people are projecting maybe is going to be the wide receiver too. For me, I hope it's going to be Winston Watkins, but obviously Jace Brown is the one that we're paying attention to most in that offense.
Yeah, hopefully Brown, Wesco, like all those players, those are players that we've been big fans of in the past, and we're just hoping that Jace Brown can thrive in a new location. We're hoping that Wesco can just be healthy. Fortunately, they said, "Oh, he's gonna be fine, he's gonna be fine," and then obviously spring hit, and they're like, "Oh, not yet." So that's a little disconcerting, but hopefully that's just being cautious, and I'd rather them be overly cautious than the other way around, especially when it comes to a neck. Um, a player that I really have not looked into at all, but I heard that he was getting praise as even praise from one Des Bryant is actually a player who came in as a corner to Texas, but appears to be switching over to wide receiver, and that's Jermaine Bishop, high end 4-star recruit, three sport player in high school: basketball, track, football, all that. Overly athletic, not the biggest guy, 6 foot 165. So I mean, obviously he needs to grow and but maybe put on some lbs. But he has. I'm sure he has the frame to where he can do that. If he hits like 6 foot 180, 185, he'll be fine when it's all said and done. If he was 5'9", 165, maybe we'd be a little more concerned about him. But from everything I've heard, is you just can't keep him off the field. He's carving out snaps even with all the players that they have there at Texas, and so that is a player that is exciting. Once again, I originally did not even have him in my ranks because he was originally listed as a corner. So that is interesting. But when you see those athletes, and at least with this time in particular, a lot of times it's like some 5'7" guy, and you're like, I don't know what to do here. At least this time you're talking about a 6 foot guy that has decent size, multi-sport. Playing basketball. Obviously seems like he has the athleticism to be able to do that. He could probably play some football too. So yeah. Aaron or either one, have you guys heard anything about Jermaine Bishop? Have you done any scouting on Jermaine Bishop, Aaron?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what, Jermaine Bishop, he can absolutely play football. In fact, his senior year, check this out, 120 receptions for 1,940 yards, 20 touchdowns. He, in his career, had 4,921 yards, receiving yards, that is, plus more all-purpose yards, right? So the guy is just dominant. He is capable rusher as well. He's just super thin, right? That's the issue. He was actually listed at 155 pounds coming out. I don't know if John like 150-pound wide receivers. I'm a little bit wary, but hey, give him some time. John threw out 165. Hopefully he's actually that. And he's been impressing in spring practice. Like, you can't take that away from him. It's just a size thing for me is my only concern, because in every other aspect of his game profiles as a strong receiver. And no, he's not going to be like a Xavier Worthy type of testing speed, I wouldn't think, but he is that type of a receiver for Texas in the future. It's just he's going to have limited opportunities in year one. So Jermaine Bishop, definitely a guy that you have to consider in those supplemental drafts in the middle rounds. It's just how early do you want to take a guy who is definitely blocked, like Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo, Emmett Mosley, some of the freshmen that are there from last season, and just in general, the depth it's challenging, but he will be able to get on the field in some sort of either a gadgety type of role or otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's where you're gonna like if you're following the year 1-0, maybe this is a special teams contributor, or maybe he sees the field enough where he gets into that 100-yard range, because he is buried. Like Cam Coleman, you talk about Jermaine Bishop's having a great spring, which he is, which he was on my list as well, just because of what we've been hearing from Des Bryant and everyone else. But we've been hearing that, and then so much more for Cam Coleman. Like, he's fitting into the system immediately. He's going to be their guy. And then obviously Ryan Wingo, he's going to get his piece of the pie too. Like, his stuff's not going away either. And then Emmett Mosley, I think the excitement on him from last year is probably rightfully faded to a safer spot, but he's still going to be like a higher end slot receiver, and he's not going to give up that role to anybody. I don't think at this point in time. Like, I think most people would agree that Emmett Mosley is probably better than incoming 150-pound, 165-pound freshman. But he's he's obviously got the eye of the coaches. He's seems to be versatile. He was recruited as an athlete, so he can play both sides of the ball. That to me means high football IQ, can play any position. So when you think about a player like that, that's a guy who can, you know, carve a role out in special teams, who's going to be, just seeing the field in rotational situations or at the end of the game. He's going to get his at some point or another. So definitely a later round supplemental guy, but certainly somebody that you should be thinking about.
Yeah, I like it. We'll have to keep an eye on those. We talked about Samorian Wingo last week, did we not, Andy? If we didn't, okay, he's saying no. So
Yeah, we
it's
missed him.
okay. Well, it sounds like he's been having a really strong spring as well. Aaron and I touched on him originally when we did the freshman recruits, but I mean, we're excited about Miami. We're excited about Darian Mensah, and there's not. I mean, we said it's not in like an insurmountable, wide receiver core to pass up or do anything with. And I think that was my original argument. Is like, yeah, there's Malachi Tony, and there's a couple other players here, but it's not like it's impossible for Wingo to get on the field. And it sounds like he probably will be getting on the field. Aaron, anything new on Wingo that you've heard, or are you a fan, becoming more of a fan, anything like that?
Yeah, I am becoming more of a fan because I think there is some opportunity there, absolutely, in that wide receiver three role, right? It's not a prominent role, but I think after Cooper Barkate and obviously Tony, we see Samorian Wingo making an impact early on as an early enrollee. And though I had some questions with average speed, and I didn't think he was like great after the catch. But I mean, at the end of the day, great ball skills. I think he tracks the ball well. I think he's a solid enough route runner to maybe become an Elijah Surratt type of player like that. That may be what you're looking at with him, at least from a stylistic standpoint. And yeah, I like the opportunity with Mensa there. I am a Milan Paris fan as well. He's a very tall wide receiver. He's nuanced. He is in the mold of more of a Tet McMillan type of player. It's just Paris has not been seeing the buzz that we've been seeing out of Samorian Wingo. So both an early enrollees at their school, it's just, Wingo's been impressing more so. So I guess at the end of the day, you have to say that when Wingo's trending up and Paris is either trending down or just kind of neutral. So yeah, he's growing on me, but I'm still not a Wingo enthusiast in like the first two rounds of drafts or anything like that. I probably won't have shares of him, just for the fact that I've seen him go pretty high in some mocks, and I can't remember in my draft, but he could be going in the first three rounds of supplementals, just depending on the people in your leagues, I guess.
Yeah, it's a bit of a. I mean, you love to hear the stuff out of camp. Obviously, he's obviously like the previous guys we've talked about. Like you're getting the eye of the coach, you're getting the eye of the media, your name's getting mentioned. Those are all great things. But Mensa and Barkate already have the chemistry from Duke last year. Malachi Tony, love him or hate him, he's going to get a ton of looks, ton of targets. They might be targets that we don't love for Devy, especially in John's sake, and I think in my sake too at this point. But he's going to get those looks. Like he's going to have a huge volume in this passing offense. So at this point, like if you're drafting him, you're just drafting him to hope that he doesn't hit those, that he hits some of those year 1-0 marks, which is fine. If he does, he will be presumably the next man up because Barkate doesn't have any more eligibility after this year. Malachi Tony is obviously going to be a true sophomore, so he'll be there for at least another season, barring some sort of transferring situation, which I don't think is going to happen. Miami's got the money to keep him around. But yeah, I mean, good stuff. If it's cheap enough, sure, I'm gonna look at Samari and Wingo as well. But he's certainly, like, if you're talking top 2 or 3 rounds in supplemental, that's probably a little bit too expensive for my blood. But I can't say that people are wrong for doing it because obviously everything we're hearing right now has been positive.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was going to bring on or bring up Milan Paris as well. I don't think it's that he's not getting any hype. I just don't think he's getting as much hype as Wingo, because I have heard Paris's name mentioned as well. Um, Before we get into some other positions, I guess the wide receivers are probably the most fun ones to talk about, all the different names and landing spots and everything. Uh, Aaron, I mean, obviously Andy, if you have done any research on these players as well, Aaron Gregory from Texas A&M is a name that keeps popping up for me. And Travis Johnson out of Michigan. We've said, we're not the biggest Bryce Underwood fans, but yet there's some people out there that think he's the QB1. Well, if he's going to be QB1, he's going to need to throw it to people. And while I do think Michigan's wide receiver core is probably the best that it's ever been, or at least in recent years, it seems like Travis Johnson out of Michigan is getting a lot of praise, and it's possible that he might even be able to get onto the field as a freshman. Although I think that'll be a little difficult because he has Andrew Marsh in front of him. He has JJ Buchanan, who is now transferred to a receiver spot that Aaron had mentioned before when we were talking about tight ends. Even though he's converting into a wide receiver, I don't think that's going to stop him from playing. I think he's a quality player, so I think he'll be on the field. And then you got Jamie French, who has also gotten some buzz through camp and everything. So I don't know if Johnson will be able to get on the field early, but he's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. And if Bryce Underwood does take that huge step forward that some people are expecting, then maybe he could be a stud when it's all said and done.
Yeah, for Michigan, I'm not the biggest fan of Johnson compared to, I mean, Salisa Moa is also getting some hype there too, from what I've heard. And I slightly prefer him. He was a five-star athlete for Michigan, so it was a good find there. And his senior year offensive production was good. I mean, it was a nice step up for him. I think he's got a lot going for him as well. So yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, it is Michigan, and there's some guys there who are more established with either the coaching staff or just experience in college. So those are good names for late in supplementals. It's just for me, I probably lean Moa over Johnson. And then you had mentioned Aaron Gregory for Texas A&M. I've also heard some good things out of Jaden Warren, who is also at Texas A&M, and I don't know exactly what the injury situation is there with Bethel Roman, but if there is some sort of lasting injury, that does open the door for like a Warren or for a Gregory. Both those guys I'm okay with, but I'm not like big fans of either. So I will say that. I mean, there's some interesting aspects to their profiles. It just did not seem like they're that nuanced. But I mean, Jaden Warren, awesome athlete, right? Big play guy. And then I guess Aaron Gregory, I didn't see a lot of things that I love, but I saw things that I liked, if that makes sense. Very solid traits overall for Gregory. So both could contribute, but we can't underrate the depth of that Texas A&M room, because we know that the chance of them being like even a top two type of wide receiver for them, even top three, is kind of unlikely barring injury. But I mean, I don't mind those names. I have a couple other freshman names that I actually am more interested in based on the spring camp and practice news.
Yeah, the one thing that got me excited about Gregory is, he's listed as the X receiver on Our Lads, and not to say that Our Lads is the end all be all or anything, but I try to stick to, what position they think a player is going to be at, and so they're putting Gregory there. Well, the only person that's really holding him back is Isaiah Horton, and I don't think that's holding too many people back. So that doesn't really scare me too much. Obviously, like, we have Mario Craver that we all love here, but he's running out of the slot. That's not really going to stop Aaron Gregory if he is that extra wide receiver. So the fact that he was getting some love, we saw the big play ability. Maybe Marcel Reed isn't the most accurate QB or anything like that, but we did see big play ability with Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, all that last year. So could we see similar things if Aaron Gregory was able to get on the field? That's why I wanted to bring him up. And then you had mentioned what was the other guy's name? I had him a little bit lower as well.
Jaden Warren.
Yeah, Jaden Warren. I have him a little bit lower as well, but I don't know where he really is going to, if he's going to be more of a slot wide receiver or what he's looking at there.
Right. I mean, he is a super fast guy. He ran at 10.16 100 meter dash. He averaged over 20 yards per reception, over 1,200 yards his senior year. So it was big time play threat. So I think he's a guy that you actually would like, but I just don't think he has like the route running diversity, and he kind of relies on some screens and comeback and deep routes. Like those are like his bread and butter. So I just don't know. Like he's a good Mario Craver replacement, but year one, I mean, and you mentioned not to spend too much time on the Texas A&M wide receiver room, but it is going to be another productive year, you'd think there. But Mario Craver, Ashton Bethel Roman, who I'm pretty high on, and then Isaiah Horton. You don't have to be high on him from a Devy standpoint, but understanding that like he was a starter at Alabama, he has a lot of experience, and they paid him a bunch of NIL money to come there to be another starter on the outside. So it's like that is kind of a big roadblock in my estimation at Texas A&M. But I was going to mention another SEC standout that you guys probably shouted out last week, so we don't have to rehash it again. But Cedarian C.D. Morgan. Now that is a guy who I am a big fan of. I'm tempted to have him at my wide receiver 1 rank within this class, which I know I know can be a little spicy because there are many folks who think, oh, he's not refined enough and this and that. But at the end of the day, at Alabama, early enrollee, just impressing with that size. And now there's some extra opportunity at Alabama. Like, sign me up, because Noah Rogers is injured. He was presumed to be kind of that starter, like a similar type of situation as we were saying with Isaiah Horton. Maybe Noah Rogers wasn't going to be a Devy asset, but he was at least going to be a potential starter. But Cedarian Morgan now may slot in as that big outside stud, like 6'4" wide receiver that, I mean, he's just oozing potential there. So I love what I'm seeing. The flashes in camp, the news, everything's been positive. And so the only other receiver that I would consider at the wide receiver 1 spot currently in this incoming freshman class would be Chris Henry Jr. Because I think Tristan TK Keys, who is an early enrollee at Tennessee, I don't know. There's just something that I'm not loving from all the spring camp news or some of the cut-ups. He's still a tier 1 guy, but I'm thinking that Cedarian Morgan and Chris Henry Jr. belong at 1, 2, however you want to rank it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll do it for you. CD Morgan is my wide receiver 1. I think there is a few question marks as to... I won't say there's question marks. Like, we obviously know Chris Henry's gonna do some solid things this season. But whether or not like he has like a true breakout, Jeremiah Smith-esque, which you can never ask for that from anybody. But let's say, is he going to have like a 700-yard receiving year? I don't know. I don't know if there's, Devin McEwen's going to get his in that offense to everybody's chagrin, honestly. Like, nobody wants him on that offense, but he's there, and he's going to be productive at what he does. So I feel like if you're going to shoot for the moon, CD Morgan is the guy that you want to go for, because it seems like he's already built quite the chemistry with Keelan Russell, who seems to be running away with the QB1 role there at this point. They had 2 really long catches in that spring game, connected for like 2 catches for 70 yards or something. So it seems like he slots right in, and he's going to be like a day 1 contributor, which is what you love to see if you're going to get like a high-end 5-star receiver, and he just comes out on day 1 guns blazing. Do you have anything you want to add about CD Morgan, John? Because there was one other wide receiver I wanted to just shout out real quick. I know we're already halfway through the episode. This is just turning into a wide receiver episode, but
hey, like I said, I think it's a little more fun. I think we've said all along this was more of a wide receiver class than even anything else. So, or at least I've said that there's a lot of wide receiver depth, and so it's a little more fun to talk about. The only thing I would say, and we kind of touched on it last week, is we have, I think we can finally be excited about Alabama again, and that goes along with putting, Cedarian Morgan at your 1 and things like that. I'm not doing it. I'm sticking to my guns. I'm keeping Chris Henry there at 1, but I had TK at 2 and Cedarian at 3, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and make that move and move Sedarian up to 2. So I will make that move. And but you're getting excited. There's actually a QB to throw it to him. There's a reason to be excited about Sedarian Morgan. He's being comped to Julio Jones and things like that. Who knows if that'll actually work out or not? But it's fun to be excited about Alabama players again.
Yes, absolutely. The other guy I wanted to mention, and this might be a little bit of a deep dive, not really, because I think he was a 4-star, but Penn State wide receiver Amarian Jackson. Uh, he was a converted safety, I want to say, but committed as a wide receiver. Obviously, Matt Campbell comes over from Iowa State. He brings with him Chase Sowell, the Devy miss from last year from Iowa. Everyone was hoping for the next Jaden Higgins. But this offense that Matt Campbell ran can produce NFL wide receivers, and he's saying, if you look at his interviews, he's saying no true freshman had a bigger spring than Amarian Jackson, and really there's nobody on that depth chart besides what he brought over from Iowa State, which is Chase Sowell, Eskildson. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but just a couple guys who started all season and barely grazed 500 yards receiving. So nothing too exciting. I think both of them are, upperclassmen at this point too. So if Campbell's pouring on the praise for this wide receiver, that's a guy that I'm looking at, towards the middle to late rounds of supplemental drafts, because this is an offense that can potentially throw the ball quite a lot, and the wide receiver one historically has been a CFF asset that went on to be day 2 draft pick. Getting in on that early is obviously valuable. So Amarian Jackson is a name that's been on my list.
Yep, I like it. He is not on my radar, so I really need to dive into that. I like that, Andy. And I will say that my last wide receiver room that I need to highlight is at USC. USC actually has, I won't even just say tight end or wide receiver only, because we have tight end Mark Bowman, early enrollee, impressing. And honestly, I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in Lincoln Riley tight ends, to be honest. They just always have weird usage. They don't really get developed for pro potential, at least not consistently. And he's kind of squandered some talent there too. Likes to use all these wide receivers, but you could argue that maybe Deuce Robinson, is a success story, but that's not for Lincoln Riley, right? He had to go somewhere else to actually get a nice role. So I will say Mark Bowman, though, talented early enrollee tight end, got a lot of upside. Jonas Williams, quarterback, who is just severely underrated. I continue to pound the table for Jonas Williams as a potential superstar quarterback if things come together for him. He's a top 6 guy for me in the quarterback class. And I'm a big fan of what he's done in the spring thus far. He's looked really smooth. I think he takes over from Maeva after this next year. And he reminds me in some ways of the way that Caleb Williams plays. I'm not saying he's going to have the ultimate, production and all of the same things, but from a build standpoint, from a play style standpoint, his production coming out of high school, Jonas Williams is a stud quarterback at USC who just doesn't quite get the recognition I think he deserves. But I will say that the wide receiver room there is at least interesting this spring, because Caden Dixon-Wyatt and Trent Mosley have both been making a lot of plays for USC. Neither one of those guys, in my opinion, have a lot of really, really high upside, but Trent Mosley could be a safe slot player for them, an early contributor, and then Caden Dixon-Wyatt could be profiles as an outside guy, just not the most athletic, unfortunately. So some limitations within his game, but both of those guys just got a shout out at USC because Dixon-Wyatt and Mosley are standing out, and Trent Mosley is the brother of Mosley at Texas too. So I think that there's at least that family connection, right? Some potentially successful guys, at least at the college level there. And Ethan Booby Feaster has not set foot on campus yet. So until he does, we'll see. I mean, he might just supersede them, right? Just leapfrog them right away as that next guy up. But right now he's behind, at least in that competition.
So I have Caden Dixon-Wyatt as my wide receiver 2, 3, 6 in the class. And that was from the start. I mean, that hasn't changed, or nothing's changed about it. And I mean, maybe I think maybe we even talked about in the beginning. It was like, hey, are you going to be able to beat out to Nick Hines and Terrell Anderson and players like that? There's probably a decent chance that White Dixon doesn't get on the field because of Nick Hines in the beginning. But the fact that he's already, flashing and things like that, I do actually think he's a very talented receiver. So I don't know that this is somebody that's just going to be held back completely. And it kind of brings me back to last year with Vernell Brown and Eugene Wilson, and I feel better about Hines than I did about Eugene Wilson for the Gators. But it was, can Vernell Brown see the field? And it was, yes, absolutely, he can see the field. So we obviously think that it's impossible sometimes, but somehow these players find a way, especially the talented ones, and at least with Wyatt Dixon. I don't know as much about Trent Mosley, but definitely more of a slot guy. But with Wyatt Dixon, it seems like he probably should see the field at some point.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that his upside could be a guy who maybe lacks the super dominant athletic upside, but is a very solid technical player and nuanced and has enough size and all those things, like Bryant Wesco, actually at Clemson. I think that's Caden Dixon Wyatt's ceiling, absolutely. But I also think that his floor is kind of low because the athletic testing, I just from everything I've seen, is quite limited for sure.
Aaron wasn't even here for the Skyline Score episode, but he's bringing it up anyway. But I think that is enough 40 solid minutes of the wide receiver sleepers, apparently. Some sleepers, some not so much. But hey, you cannot say that we're not giving you actionable info here. That is for damn sure. Let's get into the running backs. We'll save the QBs for last here. A running back that I believe we talked about, maybe we didn't when we originally did our first episode, but is getting a lot of buzz out of spring, is Derek Cooper out of Texas. And now I don't know that this is going to be a year one thing just because of who they brought in and Hollywood Smothers, Raleek Brown. Those are two players that I like a lot. In fact, we were not overly excited. I don't think anyone was overly excited when they both landed in the same exact spot. So that was, I mean, I guess anything's possible. Technically, Hollywood Smothers is a redshirt junior, so he could stay for another year. But I don't know that I think that that's going to happen. I would definitely lean towards them both going to the NFL next year, and then boom, that leaves you with James Simon and Derek Cooper. I don't, not to say that I hate James Simon, but he seems to get no buzz whatsoever. And the fact that we're already talking about Derek Cooper seems like he's probably going to pass up James Simon pretty damn quickly. So I know it's not overly exciting for today, for this year, that kind of thing. But if you could get a stud player at Texas and hopefully they're going to be playing like this, playing well, doing well in the SEC about, or are you saying, hey, there's just too many mouths to feed, I'm out?
I'm not a big Derek Cooper guy, just from a running back standpoint. I think there's just some limitations to his game. But hey, I mean, you look at some of the positives, I get why on paper, especially, like, it sounds really good because he lands at Texas. He has enough size to his game. He's speedy, right? 10.7, 100-meter time. Like, those are things that we want to see. The explosiveness, the jumping numbers. I think he would test well. But he kind of reminds me of a guy like maybe like a Nick Singleton, but I mean, not nearly as talented or the pedigree, I guess, physically. But I will say a guy who doesn't really know how to play the position, in my opinion. I just don't think he has the lateral game, the finesse, the vision, the power, those types of things. But hey, if he just spends a year there developing, like, he could be that next guy up. And we know that he'll spike in value, and we could potentially set him then, or sell him then, if you don't believe in him still. So he could retain some nice value. You don't know how Texas is going to hit that transfer portal as well, because they always seem to land big time players. So at the end of the day, I mean, I understand that there are some people out there who are big time Derek Cooper fans, so I might just need to maybe become a little bit more optimistic on him. But at the end of the day, he's still a top 10-ish guy for me in the class. It's just one of those guys where I'm also not sure if I'll draft him early enough to ever land shares.
He's in a tier of three for me. And so I mean I could push him down as far as probably like RB8, which I mean you said he's top 10 for you, so you know it sounds like you're not too much lower or anything like that. Technically I have him as my RB6, but like I said, I could push him down to RB8, and maybe I should do that when I actually like come out with my full rankings and all that kind of stuff. But once again, he's a big boy. He's 6'1", 205 pounds as a recruit. So he's probably going to gain some weight from there and everything. And not like, I mean, it doesn't sound like he's going to be the overly big to where we have to start getting concerned. He's not coming in as 220, 230 or whatever. He's coming in as 205. Now he gains 15, 20 pounds. Next thing you know, he's 225 and we're ecstatic. So these are all things that I like. The fact that he's getting hyped and everything, I definitely would like to end up with some shares, at the very least. Maybe I don't go out of my way to draft him, but I don't want to not end up with any.
Yeah, the spring game reports were very positive. You know, the fans were saying like he was. Aaron mentioned like his shiftiness and movement. The headline I saw that they were calling like he looked like he had like AI jumps and stuff out there, which I didn't watch any of it, but I don't watch film or evaluate it, so I don't know how accurate that would be anyhow. But he is obviously a bigger running back. I know John mentioned that that's maybe a good thing if he gets up to 220. It would be, but with a guy this big, I also worry about him maybe getting up to like 230, 235 once he gets into college, and then you're starting to look into like a Rocket Sanders type player, which is actually what his comp was on 247 from whoever evaluated him, which that's good for college football. Not necessarily good for Devy. It can be, until it isn't. So we'll see. I don't think this is a year that you're going to see him, like John mentioned. It seems like they've got their running back group figured out at the top, but there's going to be plenty of opportunity next year. Now, whether or not they go back to the transfer portal like they did this year, or they say, no, we're happy with Derek Cooper, we're going to just anoint him the starter. We have to wait and see how that all shakes out, obviously. But from what we've heard so far, things seem to be looking good, which that's all you got to be happy about it.
Absolutely right. He's had nothing to disappoint. If anything, should be a riser up. And just because I don't love some of the like lateral aspects to his game doesn't mean he's not explosive. Because everything from a testing standpoint and from his high school film showed that he is explosive, just not in some of the other ways that I like to see. But again, it looks like he's working on it. Right? He's doing everything he needs to. And I think another guy who's doing everything that he needs to get a role, at least in the future, is Jonas Walton at Notre Dame. I mean, he is just slowly building. He's got such an impressive combination of skills from a receiving standpoint. He's got explosiveness with testing. He's got the size. Obviously, the fit and the system there seems to be pretty strong. I mean, we know that the system is strong. It seems like he's fitting in really well as an early enrollee back. But Jonas Walton going to be the next guy up there at Notre Dame, potentially after Aeneas Williams, because we know Jeremiah Smith, Jadarian Price, they're gone. And they need some talent there. And they don't have a lot of proven players. We assume that Aeneas will take that next step up. I don't know. He's been banged up. He's never been in a full-time role before, and we know they like to rotate backs. So in comes some freshman options. Jonas Walton's getting much more hype at this point than Javian Osborne, who is also a freshman back going there. And I think Javian Osborne, to me, just doesn't have as high of a ceiling versus you look at Walton and his speed and physicality and cuts and receiving just makes me think he could be a 3-down, just feature back kind of guy.
So what scares me about Walton is exactly what Andy was just saying about Cooper, except for you're talking about Cooper's a 6'1" guy. Even if he hit 230, 235, that's probably not the end of the world. Jonas Walton's 5'9", 205. If he gains 15 or 20 pounds, now you're talking about Jonah Coleman. And, we all know what happened with Jonah Coleman. Once he hit 220, 225, whatever, he lost basically all of his burst and athleticism and everything. And even if we love him as a player, you're probably not going to be able to take advantage of that in the NFL. And so that's the only thing I'm really worried about with Jonas Walton. Um, I I don't even have Javian Osborne, and I literally have them 2 spots apart, Javian Osborne and Jonas Walton in my ranks. Technically, Javian Osborne was a slightly better recruit, and I really do mean slightly better recruit. So I have him ahead. With the news and the spring practices and all that kind of stuff, I would probably move Walton ahead. That being said, I don't know that I'm overly excited about either one of them, and I am excited about Aeneas Williams. I'm hoping that he can actually, take a step forward, even though he wasn't a great recruit in his own right, at least as far as the composite scores and things like that are concerned. So, but we've already seen him touch the field. We've seen what he can do at Notre Dame, and so I'm holding out hope for Aeneas Williams and saying it should be his, but that doesn't mean that Osborne won't touch or Walton won't touch the ball at all, because I think they obviously will, and it seems like it's probably going to be more of Walton at this point.
Yeah, and I get, some reservations there of like, well, there's 2 freshman backs, right? They could cannibalize each other a little bit, but at the end of the day, we have to pick a guy to be next up at Notre Dame, and maybe we should be high on both, but for me, it seems like all the signs are pointing more so towards Jonas Walton. And both of them are kind of stockier guys, right? They're not like these tall, 6 foot, 6'1" type of backs. They are a little bit shorter. And I don't know how to feel about, I don't have any concerns about the size thing. That's the thing. Same with Derek Cooper. Like, I understand that they're coming in at 200 plus pounds already. I see that as a good thing, right? We're always talking about, oh, well, these guys might gain, up to like 10 to 15 pounds in college at the running back position, but not all of them do, right? There's plenty of guys who actually stay the same. They never really gain. They just optimize their frame, and they optimize their training and everything, but they don't put on bad mass. And there's always the guys who do. So it's kind of hard to say who ultimately is going to take care of them, take care of their bodies and either maintain good weights or whatnot. But I guess there's just no reason for us to be concerned. He's already at the appropriate weight. He already has the athleticism coming in.
No, he's absolutely dead. I just I just scared the crap out of myself because I looked up his official weight listed by Notre Dame, and it says 5'9", 214 pounds as a true freshman. He is going to be 5'9", 220, 225 when it's all said and done. And then what really got scary is the build is described by 247 Sports as a bowling ball type with strong strength and mass. And I just mentioned Jonah Coleman, and then we start talking about a bowling ball type. I'm out. I want nothing to do with Walton.
This take will not age well, that's for sure. Josh Chevalier, friend of the show, CFF guys, just tweeted out today. He is built like Ashton Gianti with a 10.6 100-meter time to his name.
Wow.
We'll have to revisit this one in a couple of years because I think it's going to be a fun debate.
I love Josh Chevalier, and I think highly of him. So I will take back my he's dead because of Josh. Sorry, Aaron, but I'm only doing this because of Josh on this one. But bowling ball type. Andy, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it worked for Notre Dame when they had Audric Estime as the bowling ball. Obviously, that didn't work out in the NFL, but it did land him with decent draft capital. Just kind of a weird situation there at Denver. And obviously, Estime's had some good games under his belt as an NFL player. When you said 5'9", 215, that is a little scary. But then Aaron said he ran a 10.6, and I was less scared because that, to me, is more important. Like, if this guy is a speedster and also absolute, unit of a person, then it's a much easier pill to swallow. And he is right. Like, everybody's obviously on Aeneas Williams and Kedron Young to probably be the 1 and 2 this year at Notre Dame, but by all accounts, it seems like Jonas Walton is next in line, which for Notre Dame, that's good because it just seems like these guys, the running backs in particular, just stay there until they get their turn. So it might take a year or two to come to fruition, but once it's there, it should be, A, good for CFF production, and B, it generally turns into day two draft capital for the starting running back from Notre Dame. With the exception of Kyron Williams, who is obviously doing good things for your NFL team at this point right now as well.
Yeah, and I tried my best not to be a sizist at all, especially when it comes to wide receivers and things. But with running backs, unfortunately, we've seen it too often recently where some of these players come in at 215, 220, and the next thing you know, they're 240. And, and when you're 5'9", you only have so much room to grow before it's too much for your own frame. And so if he's already at 214, if he goes up another 10, 15 pounds, I mean, you're talking about ridiculous size for a 5'9" player. And that's the only thing that scares me is, unfortunately, we have seen it. We've seen players. I'm trying to think of the player from FSU who just dominated and then gained 15 pounds. The player from LSU that dominated and gained 10 pounds. You were talking about the player from Oklahoma State earlier. I can't think of his damn name right now, but we talking about him. He gained 10, 15 pounds. Next thing you know, he can't even run. So I'm just a little I guess gun shy at this point because of those kind of players.
I get it, but are you saying that you need to draft, freshmen who are coming in at like in the 190s because you're afraid, those guys aren't going to put on too much bad weight? Because I know it's a double-edged sword, right? Guys who are 180 putting on 20 pounds, they could get slow too, and then now they're hardly even optimal size, and now they're slow compared to what they were in high school. So I don't know.
No, this is not some science that I've that I've figured out or anything. I'm just saying I am more cognizant of what is going on with weights and things like that than I used to be. Because I used to only care, are you above 190, like that kind of thing. Now I'm like, all right, well, I don't really need you at 210 already, that kind of thing too.
I think a guy who we probably should acknowledge here as just a standout, but no surprise. He's not a sleeper, right? He doesn't really belong on the sleeper show for freshmen, but Savion Hyder for Michigan, absolutely showing up as expected, right? I mean, he is just phenomenal. No surprise here, right? 5-star back. The guy that I really had as my running back one, I know that was not a popular take. We'll see if it ends up coming true. Like, I've flip-flopped them. So I think at one point I had Crowell also just moved ahead recently, but he's been banged up. And Crowell at Alabama, he's losing a lot of valuable opportunities there. But I think if we don't at least shout out Savion as that just awesome talent and stand out in spring practice, people will be like, well, no love for him because he's probably one of the biggest, baddest running backs out there in college right now, and he's going to be a true freshman.
What was that naming? It's some 1-star guy. I can't really.
Yeah,
Andy,
well, you know my thoughts on Jordan Marshall, so it's no surprise that they watched Hyder for one spring and like, oh, so this is what good running backs look like. So it wouldn't be a shock at all to see him take over the RB1 role and send Marshall to the shadow realm, so to speak. I know we're up against it. We didn't even talk about QBs. But I would be remiss to not bring up Jamal Rule from Nebraska, a 3-star guy who is probably, I would say he's probably going to be the RB1. Looked really good in spring. Strong, fast. Matt Rule had all really great things to say about him. Under-recruited is the term that gets thrown around with Jamal Rule. It seems because he's a 3-star guy. Obviously, that's not somebody that all of us are going to be paying too much attention to until you get that pop in spring, which he absolutely did. I know that, they're moving on from, I can't even remember his name anymore. Nobody's even talking about Emmett Johnson anymore. But yeah, they're moving on from Emmett Johnson, who's obviously they fed him the rock a lot. So if they're looking to maintain that system where they just kind of have a primary. I can't imagine they are, because it's not like you don't want to just put all your eggs in one basket if you don't have to. And maybe that's just a testament to how thin this depth chart was at Nebraska. But it seems like whoever they did bring in with Jamal Rule has been the guy that has elevated thus far. And, you're looking at him probably, I mean, at this point, he's probably going to be in the middle rounds of supplemental drafts. He would have been obviously higher if he's a higher recruit from the services, but probably instant impact as far as like production and scoring points for CFF, and potential to be a Devy guy if the cards fall for him properly.
I don't think I've ever looked at a Nebraska recruit in my life, and I don't plan on doing it today. So I'm gonna let you stick to that one there, buddy. No, I'm just messing with you. I honestly I don't know anything about him, so I can't say good or bad things about him.
Yeah, no, Jamal Rule. I mean, the fact that he's just already potentially just claiming that role as a true freshman, I think that's what's got to get your attention, right? The volume should be there. We saw what Emma Johnson did, and Emma Johnson's not a special athlete. So if Rule can just be a slightly better athlete than that, you're looking at maybe multiple years of strong production for CFF purposes. That's great. For NFL purposes, I'm still a little bit skeptical on Jamal Rule, but hey, at least you'll get some nice value out of him. And we can't say that for all these guys, right? You might draft a Javian Osborne, or you might draft a Jonas Walton, and they never really see the field. I mean, we've seen that with multiple backs at Notre Dame. We've seen that with other big schools. So, yeah, no guarantee at USC, at Oklahoma, like no guarantees that these freshmen at those spots are going to see the field. Looks like Jamal Rule is at least projected to have a pretty big role. I do want to say one more name. We can quick buzz through and list off the quarterbacks who have caught our eye if we want to from a time standpoint, but I will say that Jonathan Haddon is having a really good spring for Oklahoma, but he is a guy talking about big backs. He has ballooned up from like the 205 to 215 range to 230 pounds. And as a true freshman, I'm like, dang, that's a lot of weight to put on. But I will say, like, everybody's been talking about how bursty he is, how he has flashed in the spring. So I don't know if somehow he just maintained athleticism at that weight, or I don't know what's going on there. I was already skeptical a little bit of his lack of like on-field speed. Like his testing times were fine in high school, they're good, but I thought he was just like kind of a no-nonsense like downhill runner. I didn't find him to be like elusive laterally. I didn't think he was stringing that many tackles together. Like I just think he hits the hole hard and decisively, and now he's a 230-pound back. I'm like, I just don't know that I expect a lot from him. Like maybe he'll be a Caleb Johnson type of player. He can have a nice season at some point in college, but I don't know if we're expecting superstar status by any means, but he is impressing. So Jonathan Haddon Jr. definitely going to be rising up. If you want to take him in supplementals, you'll have to take him in those maybe second, third round ranges.
I just realized that I actually have a note here in my notes for tonight's episode with Jamal Rule having a big spring game touchdown. So I apologize to Andy. I have done research on Nebraska players, and I'm ashamed of myself. I don't know what to do at this point. I guess we just shut the pod down and just call it quits because I don't know what else to do.
Thank you for setting the record straight. I appreciate it. And I didn't just bring him up out of nowhere, but to do Jonathan Hatton, I think so. If Xavier Robinson is out for this spring, and who's it, Torrey Blaylock, that's your old guy, John. I think he's out as well, but he's seizing the opportunity, right? So whether or not there's people injured or what, he's a high-end recruit, and he's saying like, well, if nobody else is going to take this job, I'm going to take it. And I don't think anyone here has been thrilled with what Blaylock did, and certainly not with what Xavier Robinson has done in the past. So I think that job is up for grabs as far as I'm concerned. 230 pounds, it's a big guy, but Oklahoma traditionally has been a team that'll run the ball. I know things have kind of shifted in the recent years, but and I know Jonathan Arbuckle tends to be more of a guy that's going to throw the ball rather than pound the rock. But who knows? Like, it hasn't been working out for them the last few years. Maybe they try something new this year, and maybe Jonathan Hatton's the guy that changes their mind.
I think that we have not seen everything that we're going to see yet out of the Oklahoma backfield. I think there's a lot up in the air. It's an ambiguous situation there. So I think there's a lot because I've even heard things about Decefin Walker. Is that the right way to say his name? Decefin? I don't know. I've heard there's so many different players, and I've actually heard some big things. So maybe it's just more that, like, we're actually seeing them trying to implement a run game because they obviously did not even do that last year. So maybe it's more that they're trying to do that this year, bringing in multiple people, doing that kind of thing. We are already well over the hour mark, so maybe we'll have to get into the QBs another night. But I did want to bring up, just because it's hilarious, we touched on Bryce Underwood earlier, but Andy had brought up Tommy Carr out of Michigan and how he's actually doing some big things in spring practices, spring games, all that kind of good stuff. And he went 21 of 30 for 143 yards. He is CJ Carr's brother, I believe, and he is also the grandson of former Michigan coach Lloyd Carr. So there's a lineage there at the very least, and it has to give you a little bit. It has to scare you a little bit if you're a big Bryce Underwood fan because, like, we already see CJ Carr doing some big things, and now Tommy Carr, true freshman, is already kind of standing out.
Yeah, I think the fact that Kyle Whittingham, new Michigan coach, even had to say the sentence, Bryce is our starter right now, is enough to, like, make you, like, he said it matter of factly. Like, he said, Bryce is our starter right now. It's not any different after today.
Sure.
And it's because the spring game, Bryce Underwood did not look good in the spring game. But the fact that, somebody, I'm assuming in, like, the media junket after the game was like, Tommy looked good. Is there a QB1 competition? The fact that that question's even getting asked is kind of alarming if you're a guy that maybe just did a C2C startup and took Bryce Underwood as 101. So, we're not sitting here saying Tommy Carr is the next Peyton Manning or anything like that. Certainly not. Like, the numbers from that spring game, it was very efficient, but it wasn't like blow your mind or anything like that. And certainly better than Bryce Underwood. But again, like, he's not, doing anything that's insane at this point in time. But the fact that he has seemed to secure the QB2 role already as, like, a guy who, maybe a higher end 4-star, if you want to even call him that, it's definitely encouraging. So I'm he's a guy that I'm excited about, and I'll probably take a stab at late in supplemental drafts if he doesn't continue this hype machine.
That's QB1 overall, Bryce Underwood, right? Right.
Right. Per
All
the ADP, yes.
Per the ADP, C2C ADP, Bryce Underwood, QB1 overall. You hate to see it, but we will get into the QBs more on another pod. I don't know if it'll be next week. Probably not, because, like I said, we're probably going to pivot back to the rookies and wrap up our rookie coverage over the next couple of weeks, and then we can get into all that kind of good stuff over the next few months. Maybe get back into some fun games and things like that as well. Aaron, you got some Florida sun. You got to relax. You got to enjoy yourself. You got to drink some Woodford Double Double. Words of wisdom, my friend.
Well, we all have to enjoy ourselves every once in a while here, so hopefully everybody can enjoy the week here with the NFL draft coming up. May all of your favorite teams, all your favorite players go to the ideal landing spots. We know maybe not all of them are going to end up in places that we like, but try to still trust in the talent, and ultimately, we are excited to help you guide you through that. Let's get into that content next week. I'm super excited for that because these landing spots, there's always a bunch of juicy ones. I know there's ones that kind of suck, at least in the moment, right? But let's not panic too much, and let's just enjoy the moment.
Absolutely. My first official rookie draft of the offseason started yesterday, and I made my first pick this morning. I had the 113 pick, and I took Elijah Surratt with the 113. So I that was my first and only pick so far of the 2026 rookie offseason. Elijah Surratt, my baby. I plan on having a lot more of him, but that is enough about the freshmen. That is enough about the rookies until Thursday and until we get back in your ears. We will be back in your ears as soon as possible. But for now, we're going to go ahead and cash out. See you guys.